The lights came up without warning, bright and flat, pressing down on the stage like a weight. They erased the edges of the room and left only what mattered: 2 men, a microphone, and thousands of watching eyes. The crowd settled into a low, restless murmur, the kind that carried expectation more than sound. This was supposed to be a simple appearance, a shared moment under cameras that never blinked. It became something else the instant the former champion stepped forward. He adjusted the microphone with a practiced hand. His shoulders were squared, his suit neat, his smile tight. Years ago, those shoulders had carried belts and cheers. Now they carried something heavier. He spoke clearly, carefully, choosing words that landed like stones. He spoke of time, of age, of decline. He said Ali's name slowly, tasting it, letting it hang. A few people laughed, unsure if they were supposed to. Others leaned in, sensing the shift. Muhammad Ali did not move. He stood with his hands resting low, fingers loosely linked, as if holding something fragile. His face was calm, unreadable, not distant but present. He looked at the man speaking, not past him, not through him, just at him. The cameras found Ali's eyes and stayed there, waiting for the spark they had been trained to catch. The former champion felt the attention and leaned into it. His voice grew firmer. He spoke of nights in empty gyms, of bodies that no longer answered the way they once had. He spoke as if telling a story, but each sentence curved back toward Ali, sharp at the end. The crowd reacted in waves, soft gasps, nervous laughter, a few shouts that quickly died. Everyone understood the rules of moments like this. A line was being drawn in public. A response was expected. Ali shifted his weight slightly, a movement so small it could have been missed if the cameras had not been watching for it. He breathed in through his nose, slow and even. The sound around him seemed to fade, not because it stopped, but because he did not chase it. His eyes stayed steady. His face did not tighten. The former champion paused, glancing sideways as if checking whether the room was with him. It was. The lights made sure of that. He smiled again, this time wider, and delivered his sharpest remark yet. It landed cleanly, cutting through the noise. A hush followed, heavy and sudden. Even the air felt still. Ali's name echoed once more, softer this time, like a challenge that had lost its edge mid-flight. The challenger waited. The crowd waited. Producers held their breath behind cameras. This was the instant they would replay later, the moment that would be clipped and shared, frozen and slowed. Ali lifted his head a fraction, not in defiance, not in pride. Just enough to acknowledge the space between them. For a brief second, nothing happened. The silence stretched, uncomfortable and alive. It pressed against the former champion first. His jaw tightened. His eyes flickered. The armor he wore, built from words, from volume, from memory, creaked under the quiet. Ali remained still, and in that stillness, the balance of the room began to tilt. The room did not return to its earlier noise. Instead, it settled into something denser, a held breath that refused to release. The lights stayed bright, but they no longer felt neutral. They exposed everything: the slight tremor in hands, the way eyes searched for cues, the discomfort of being seen too clearly. The stage was small, yet it felt enormous, as if the space between the 2 men had stretched wider than the arena itself. Ali felt the weight of the moment without naming it. He had stood in louder rooms, harsher rooms. He had known danger that announced itself without words. This was different. This was a room full of people who believed they already understood how the story should go. He sensed their expectation pressing forward, urging him to perform the version of himself they carried in their heads. He did not resist it. He simply did not follow it. Behind the cameras, technicians shifted their feet. One producer leaned forward, hand half raised, then stopped himself. Nothing was technically wrong. Yet everything felt unbalanced. The former champion still held the microphone, but the confidence that had fueled his words minutes earlier had thinned. He cleared his throat, eyes darting briefly toward the crowd, then back to Ali. The silence had not gone the way he planned. Ali noticed the man's breathing. Quick, shallow. He noticed how the suit jacket pulled tighter across his shoulders, how the fingers around the microphone flexed and tightened. These were not signs of cruelty or arrogance. They were signs of strain. of someone who had come ready to fight and found no opponent willing to swing back. The crowd shifted again, unsure how long the pause was supposed to last. Someone coughed. A phone rang somewhere and was silenced too quickly. The arena, moments ago alive with noise, now felt like a place where even small sounds were out of place. Ali kept his posture open, his chin level, his gaze steady. He did not smile. He did not frown. He offered no signal that could be misread as victory. The former champion tried to fill the space with a chuckle that did not quite land. He made a short remark, lighter than before, as if testing whether humor could restore his footing. A few people laughed, but it was thinner laughter, uncertain. The words drifted and fell flat. He nodded to himself, once, as though agreeing with a thought no one else could hear. Ali felt the room watching for him again. He could sense how close the moment was to breaking, how easily a single sharp word could tip everything into applause or outrage. He knew that kind of power well. He had used it before. He also knew its cost. The quiet he held was not empty. It was deliberate, shaped by years of knowing when to move and when to wait. The challenger shifted his stance, stepping back half a pace, then forward again. The microphone dipped slightly. His eyes met Ali's, and for the first time, there was something unguarded there. Not anger. Not mockery. Something closer to fatigue. The crowd felt it too, though few could have said what had changed. Ali inhaled slowly, the breath deep and grounding. He did not speak yet. He allowed the moment to continue becoming what it needed to be. Around them, the room adjusted, settling into a new rhythm shaped by restraint rather than noise. The former champion lowered the microphone for a moment, as if its weight had increased. His shoulders dropped just enough to reveal the effort it took to keep them squared. The lights reflected off his face, tracing lines that were not there in old photographs. He glanced toward the crowd, then down at the stage floor, polished and unmarked, a surface that had never known his sweat. No one announced his story, but it was present in the way he stood. Years earlier, rooms like this had lifted him up. His name had traveled fast, spoken with admiration, sometimes fear. He had learned early how applause could fill empty spaces, how winning could quiet doubts that arrived late at night. But time had moved without asking permission. Injuries came first, small and manageable. Then losses followed, heavier and harder to explain. Eventually, the calls slowed. The rooms grew smaller. The silence after matches grew longer. He remembered the first night he trained alone again. The gym lights had flickered. The bag had swung back at him slower than he expected. His body responded, but not with the certainty it once had. He told himself it was temporary. He always did. But temporary stretched into years, and the world moved on without waiting for his strength to return. Ali had continued forward, not untouched by time, but unchanged in presence. That contrast had settled deep in the challenger's chest. It was not jealousy that brought him to the microphone. It was grief. Grief for a version of himself that no longer showed up when called. Grief for recognition that had slipped quietly out of reach. Standing across from Ali, under lights that still knew his name, stirred something raw and unresolved. He lifted the microphone again, though his grip had softened. He spoke more slowly now, the sharp edge dulled by something closer to honesty. He referenced the past without naming it, hinting at battles fought and moments missed. His words were still pointed, but less precise, as if he no longer knew exactly where to aim. The crowd listened differently, sensing a shift they could not explain. Ali listened without interruption. He did not nod. He did not look away. He absorbed the words as they came, understanding not just their meaning but their source. He recognized the cadence of a man trying to prove something to himself more than to anyone else. He had heard it before, in locker rooms, in quiet conversations after the cameras left. He knew how easily pride could mask pain. The challenger paused mid-sentence, his voice catching just enough to be noticed. He cleared his throat and continued, but the momentum was gone. He was no longer performing. He was speaking from a place that felt exposed and unfamiliar. The crowd shifted again, less restless now, more attentive. The stage no longer felt like a battlefield. It felt like a crossing point. Ali remained still, his presence steady, offering no resistance and no encouragement beyond attention. He allowed the man space to finish what he needed to say, even when the words stumbled. In that allowance, something softened. The challenger's shoulders eased. His tone lowered. The microphone dipped again. For a brief moment, the former champion looked relieved, as if setting something down he had carried too long. The lights did not dim. The cameras did not move. But the story on that stage had quietly changed shape. The moderator shifted slightly to the side, sensing the tension but unwilling to interrupt it. The stage no longer followed the planned outline. It had its own direction now. The former champion lifted his head and squared himself again, as if remembering where he was and what was expected of him. The microphone rose with him. Whatever softness had appeared moments earlier was quickly covered, tucked away behind familiarity. He spoke louder. The words came faster. He leaned into the role the room recognized. He reminded everyone why he had once mattered, listing moments without dates, victories without numbers. Then he turned fully toward Ollie and let the restraint slip. The comments were sharper again, more public, designed to draw a line too visible to ignore. He questioned Ali's relevance, his timing, his presence under these lights. The crowd reacted instantly. Gasps, murmurs, a surge of attention snapping back into place. This was the confrontation everyone had been waiting for. The air tightened. Cameras adjusted their angles, closing in. Somewhere in the audience, someone shouted Ali's name, stretching it into a demand. Another voice answered with the challenger's. The room divided itself without instruction. Ali felt the shift immediately. The noise returned, but it carried a different weight now. This was not playful provocation. This was a man pushing outward because something inside him had reached its limit. Ali remained where he was, his posture unchanged. He did not step forward. He did not retreat. He allowed the words to arrive fully, to stand between them without deflecting them. The former champion continued, his voice steady but his eyes restless. He circled a single idea again and again, pressing it harder each time, hoping it would finally break through Ali's calm. He wanted acknowledgement, of rivalry, of superiority, of anything that proved the distance between them still mattered. The crowd leaned in, feeling the escalation, waiting for the inevitable spark. Ali's hands rested open at his sides. He felt the familiar pull of response rise and then settle. He had learned long ago how quickly moments like this could turn. A single sentence could harden positions beyond repair. He chose not to rush. His silence was not absence. It was control. The challenger stopped abruptly, the last word hanging unfinished. He looked at Ali, truly looked, as if expecting resistance he could push against. None came. The lack of reaction unsettled him more than anger would have. His brows knit together. He shifted his footing, the microphone trembling slightly now. The crowd sensed the imbalance. The noise softened, unsure whether to surge or fade. The confrontation had reached a strange peak where volume no longer guaranteed power. The former champion swallowed and spoke again, but the words landed unevenly. He had spent himself. Ali took a small step forward, not into the challenger's space, but closer to the center of the stage. The movement was subtle, almost respectful. It drew every eye. The room fell quiet once more, not because it was forced to, but because it wanted to hear what would come next. Ali lifted his gaze, steady and direct, and the confrontation finally paused, balanced on the edge of something irreversible. Ali stopped at the center of the stage. He did not reach for the microphone right away. The pause felt deliberate, not dramatic. He let the quiet settle again, letting it find its own depth. The former champion stood a few steps away, shoulders tense, eyes fixed on Ali's face, searching for any sign of what was coming. When Ali finally spoke, his voice was low, even, carried without effort. It did not need to rise. The room leaned toward it on its own. "I hear you," he said. The words were simple. They landed softly, but they did not drift. They stayed where they were placed. The challenger blinked, caught off guard. This was not the counter he had prepared for. Not the defense he expected. Ali continued without hurry. He did not reference the taunts. He did not deny them or accept them. He spoke as if addressing a man rather than an audience. He acknowledged the years the challenger had carried, the work that no one had clapped for, the strength it took to keep showing up when fewer people were watching. He did not list achievements. He did not compare paths. He spoke only to what he could see in front of him. The crowd listened, strangely still. The cameras captured faces that had softened, mouths slightly open, brows drawn in concentration. This was not a speech meant to win. It was not framed for applause. Ali's words moved carefully, guided by restraint rather than performance. The former champion's grip on the microphone loosened further. His shoulders sank as if something heavy had been unfastened. He tried to hold his expression steady, but it wavered. His eyes glistened under the lights, and he turned his head slightly, as if embarrassed by the exposure. Ali shifted his stance, grounding himself. He spoke about time without fear, about how it takes from everyone differently. He did not position himself above it. He placed himself inside it. He acknowledged loss without naming victories. He spoke of standing under lights that no longer feel the same and of learning to breathe anyway. The challenger swallowed hard. His jaw clenched, not in anger now, but in effort. He nodded once, small and involuntary. The room felt closer, as if the distance between people had narrowed. Ali finished without a flourish. He did not conclude with a final line meant to echo. He simply stopped speaking and let the silence return. It was a different silence now. It did not press. It held. For a moment, no one moved. Then the former champion lowered his microphone completely. He exhaled, a long breath that seemed to come from somewhere deep. When he spoke again, it was barely above a murmur. The edge was gone. He did not apologize. He did not explain. He said Ali's name, this time without challenge, without weight. The crowd responded slowly, uncertain at first, then with a warmth that rose gently rather than crashing. It was not thunderous. It was sincere. Ali nodded once, acknowledging it without claiming it. He stepped back, returning to his place, his posture unchanged. Under the bright lights, something unseen had shifted. Armor had not been torn away. It had been loosened, set down carefully, as if for the first time in years. The applause faded as naturally as it had risen, leaving behind a softness that felt unfamiliar to a room built for spectacle. People settled back into their seats, glancing at one another as if to confirm they had witnessed the same thing. The moderator cleared his throat, uncertain whether to reclaim the stage or leave the moment untouched. He chose stillness. It felt safer. The former champion remained where he was, microphone lowered, eyes no longer searching for an exit or an advantage. He looked older now, not in years, but in honesty. The lights had not changed, yet they revealed him differently. Without the sharpness of performance, his face carried relief and something close to vulnerability. He nodded once more toward Ali, a quiet acknowledgement that required no response. Ali met the nod with a calm glance and nothing more. He did not step forward again. He did not add words to what had already been said. He understood the fragility of the moment. Too much attention could bruise it. Too little could let it slip away unnoticed. He allowed it to stand as it was. The crowd began to disperse in small movements, coats adjusted, bags lifted, conversations whispered rather than spoken aloud. The energy in the room had changed from anticipation to reflection. People did not rush. They lingered, as if leaving too quickly might break whatever had been formed. Backstage, the noise was muted. Footsteps echoed softly along concrete floors. Ali walked with unhurried ease, his presence steady, his expression composed. He was approached by a staff member who offered a quick word of praise. Ali acknowledged it politely and kept moving. He did not carry the moment with him like a trophy. He let it remain where it belonged. The former champion stood alone near the edge of the stage, watching the crowd thin. He rolled his shoulders back and inhaled deeply, testing the space inside his chest. It felt different, lighter, though he could not say why. He glanced toward the corridor where Ali had disappeared, then looked away, not out of avoidance, but acceptance. Later, in quieter corners of the building, small conversations unfolded. People spoke less about what had been said and more about how it had felt. There were no clear lines to quote, no dramatic gestures to imitate. What lingered was the tone, the restraint, the sense that something important had happened without being announced. Outside, the night air was cool and still. The lights of the building glowed behind departing figures, casting long shadows that stretched and then faded. The former champion stepped into the darkness and paused, hands in his pockets, breathing evenly. He did not feel triumphant. He did not feel defeated. He felt settled, perhaps for the first time in a long while. Ali moved on quietly, as he always did, leaving behind no instruction and no claim. The ripple he had created did not follow him. It stayed with those who had felt it, reshaping their understanding in ways too subtle to name. The days that followed did not carry headlines the way moments like that often did. There were no looping clips replayed with captions, no sharp summaries that captured what had happened. The story resisted that kind of framing. It lived instead in quieter places, moving slowly, settling where it was allowed. The former champion noticed it first in small ways. Conversations changed tone when his name came up. People listened longer. They did not rush to correct or compare. In training spaces and hallways, there were fewer jokes at his expense, fewer sideways glances meant to measure how far he had fallen. It was not sympathy he felt from others. It was recognition. A subtle shift, but unmistakable. He found himself thinking back to the moment on stage, not with embarrassment, but with clarity. He replayed Ali's voice in his mind, not the words themselves, but the way they had been delivered. There had been no urgency in them, no need to be right. That absence lingered. It unsettled him at first, then steadied him. He began to understand how much effort he had spent holding himself rigid, guarding an image that no longer served him. Ali did not reach out. He did not follow up with a call or a message. He understood that some moments were meant to open doors, not walk people through them. His life continued as it had before, filled with obligations, appearances, and quiet spaces in between. Yet those who met him in the weeks after noticed something they could not quite name. A softness in how he listened. A patience that made others slow down without being asked. In one small gym, the former champion returned to training, not to prove anything, but to move. The bag swung back at him, heavy and familiar. He did not push it hard. He let it move. He focused on breath and balance rather than speed. For the first time in years, he did not feel chased by time. He felt accompanied by it. Others who had been in the room that night carried the moment differently. Some spoke of it in passing, their voices lowering without realizing why. Others held it privately, measuring their own reactions against the quiet they had witnessed. The ripple spread without direction, touching people who had never met Ali and never would. Ali remained what he had always been in public, measured, composed, dignified. But something in his restraint had traveled further than noise ever could. It had settled into the spaces where pride loosened and listening began. He had not unraveled armor by force. He had simply shown what it looked like to set it down. The night itself faded into memory, but its shape remained. Not as a lesson, not as a triumph, but as a moment when strength appeared without spectacle and left behind a gentler weight. Time moved on, as it always does, indifferent to moments that feel singular while they are happening. Seasons changed. New events replaced old ones on stages and screens. Yet for those who had been present under those bright lights, the memory did not fade the way noise usually does. It settled into something quieter and more durable. The former champion carried it with him in ways he did not announce. When he spoke now, he chose his words with less urgency. He no longer rushed to remind people who he had been. He let conversations unfold without steering them back to old victories or old grievances. There were still difficult days, moments when the weight of comparison returned uninvited. But when it did, it no longer demanded a performance. He had learned that silence could hold him without erasing him. In a modest community center months later, he stood before a small group of young athletes. The room was nothing like the arena. No harsh lights, no cameras humming. He spoke simply about discipline, about listening to one's own body, about the importance of showing up even when no one was watching. He did not mention Ali. He did not need to. The restraint he had witnessed had already found its way into his voice. Ali continued along his path, leaving no visible trail behind him. He appeared where he was invited, spoke when it was necessary, listened more than he spoke. Those who met him often felt calmer in his presence, though few could explain why. He did not remind people of what he had done. He allowed them to notice who he was being. Occasionally, someone from that night would recognize him and hesitate, unsure whether to bring it up. Ali would acknowledge them kindly, without prompting memory or praise. He understood that moments gain their power not from being revisited, but from being carried forward quietly. Years later, when the former champion thought back on that night, the details had softened. He could no longer recall the exact words spoken or the order in which they had landed. What remained was the feeling of standing exposed and not being struck, of being seen without being diminished. That understanding had reshaped his sense of strength more than any victory ever had. The ripple continued outward, subtle and unclaimed. It appeared in conversations where voices lowered instead of rose. In pauses where people chose not to fill the space with noise. In moments when restraint replaced reaction. No one traced it back to its source. It did not require credit. Under bright lights and beyond them, the armor people wore grew a little lighter. Not because it was demanded, but because someone had shown, once, what it looked like to stand without it and remain whole.